Sir, welcome you to these conversations with you, the conversation that we have titled so on and so forth. This is our third episode. In the first episode, we basically talked about your evolution as a literary critic and your encounter with different literary theories and theorists. And in the second episode, we comprehensively discussed your views on postmodernism. Today, we want to talk about your evolution as a historian and your role towards Assam's history, including some of the historical approaches, including subaltern historiography. So, I welcome you to this conversation.
Thank you.
So, the first question is I want to ask you you have been a student, you have been a researcher on literature, and throughout your life you taught English literature, but you also eventually became a historian, and you have a great deal of interest in Assam's history. So how did it happen? Means how history could influence you so much?
You see, I must tell you that the professional historians of Assam do not recognize me as a historian at all. They had their reasons. I don't much like slogging about with all those details, My interest is in raising questions and exploring different fields. And there I dabble a little and dig up some interesting facts and ideas, and I leave them there. Then I move on to a different subject. That is how I have gone about it. So if people do not call me an historian, I won't be surprised.
Yes,
but I think what I have done in history should be interesting to even to professional historians, because they have not asked those questions.
Yes, sir.
Which
Yes,
are very vital.
Yeah.
As for your question, I had been a voracious reader since my childhood, especially after coming to Guwahati during the very distressing days of the Second World War, when the Assamese middle class faced a crisis thanks to the rising prices and the general unrest in society. And we had a large family. The pay with which my father used to live a very comfortable life with his family became totally inadequate. We were half-starved. And because of the economic distress, the family life was also, very insecure. And how would I say it? The relations also became very, how do I put it, became very inadequate. And we just survived. And as a result, I found escape in reading. From very childhood, of course, I was a precocious child, and I learned reading at a very early age. Whatever came my way,
you read everything.
Panjika, this, that,
Yes.
newspapers.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes I understood, sometimes I not. Sometimes, but
You kept on reading.
And my father was a teacher in very interesting times. During British, before he became a school inspector, during the British days, the resources were inadequate, but both the teachers and the government were very serious about it.
Education, about education.
How training teachers and preparing teachers for better teaching. I don't see anything of that sort today.
Today, yes.
In those days, there were many teachers' handbooks. In Assamese and Bengali. I started reading Bengali, I don't know when I was 7, 8, 9. And there are very interesting books about. And these books not only told, not only expounded the, the theories and the principles of teaching, methods of teaching, but also included stories, descriptions of nature, this and that, so that the teachers could use them to make the class interesting and make the students interested in those things. Oh. And so there are many historical episodes in those, manuals and handbooks for teachers. And I read them, all of them. And my imagination was inflamed by those colorful tales of the past. Babylon, Samaria, ancient Egypt, England. And my mind was absorbed in it. I forgot the harsh realities of the present. And
So in a way, reading history was also escaping from the cruelty of time.
No, escaping, it was interesting. Life was dull, oppressive, but history and those things, stories also. It was a different world. And so that keen interest in the past remained. And when I grew up, I never thought of taking up history as a subject. And my marks in history in matriculation were also not something to write home about. Still, and I also did my BA without history. But in Presidency College, I found a very brainy and erudite student called Dilip Chakraborty. He was a member of the SFI and very energetic and fiery student, He came from a very poor family, but he was a very spirited guy, and nobody would dare sort of cross him. In my conversations with Dilip, I heard many of those things, about Koshambi, about the beginnings of archaeology in India. And
so he was a student of history?
Yes, he was a student of history. And now he's a famous archaeologist.
Archaeologist, yes.
He became a fellow at Cambridge. And I think now he's but very interestingly, he is now one of the doyens of the Hindutva School of History. At that time, he was at SFI, and committed SFI. Anyway, so he doesn't look back at that past, but I remember them vividly, and it aroused my intellectual curiosity. I discussed those things I tried to read up some of these things he mentioned. And so a friendship grew between us. And so there is some continuity between this interest in the past, my childhood, and what triggered my interest again in Presidency College. And this continued. For example, during my MA days
Delhi University.
At Delhi, I borrowed a book from the Delhi School of Economics Library through a friend. Economic History of Ancient East. Egypt, economic history, And a very close friend of mine, Dalit Burwa, he was astounded. What are you reading? I said, I find it interesting.
Interesting.
So that continued to some extent. But, not very serious. But I was interested. And at Cambridge, because of the atmosphere at that time, the late 60s were a period of student unrest and questioning about the structure of society, revolution and all that. And that also triggered an interest in history. So I read some history then. I came across students from Africa. They were also talking about
their own
liberation
history
from colonialism. And that was the atmosphere, So history was part of that. And I became interested in working class and so on and so forth. And I read books by the radical historians. And then I came across, as you say, E.P.
E.P.
Thompson.
Thompson, yes.
It was a, how do I put it? It was a kind of revelation to me. Very absorbing, very well written like a novel, yet very factually replete with facts and also correct, accurate, systematic.
Okay, so does it mean that your reading of E.P. Thompson also helped you in developing an approach to history?
Quite so, quite so. No, but it sort of aroused my interest in what to write about in history, how to write about them or about it. And so, you can say that yes, an approach to history. Yeah. Now,
And-
I found that such a book had not been written till then in India. Even now, I don't think there's.
Yes. And in your writings, you have very often referred to Didi Kosambi.
Yeah.
Your reading of Didi Kosambi. And both E.P. Thompson and Didi Kosambi left their political affiliations to the communist parties, finding that the party approach had been very regimented. Therefore, they came out of it. For example, E.P. Thompson started New Left Review, and Didi Kusambi also dedicated more and more time in exploring history and writing history. So did that also influence you that rather than having a party affiliation which appeared to be so regimented, it is important that you maintain the Marxist approach but do not get yourself regimented.
No, I said there are differences. For example, Hobsbawm, who also writes very interesting books of history. Each of them is almost a classic, And yet he remained a member of the Communist Party to the very end.
Yes.
His friends like E.P. Thompson, they left. They remained friends, but he remained. He retained his card, membership card. So it is difficult to generalize, but yes, there is one thing. Communist, the style of working in communist organizations is very regimented. And originality, genius, and things of that sort are not encouraged because the party leaders, they follow a certain line. If the line is challenged or troubled, they become disturbed. Whereas for any scholar, challenging accepted conventional truths, this is the usually, this is their interest. This is what sort of interests them, attracts them. Not simply parroting known facts. Whereas the party leaders, they sort of, let us say, they sort of had read up something long ago, and they would like to sort of remain attached to that. That kind of thing, So a scholarly interest and a party interest sometimes collide. But when you retire from that party life and turn totally against it, then it becomes a degeneration.
Yes. That didn't happen in either in case of
E.P. Thompson.
Thompson or for that matter,
Kosambi,
Didi
Kosambi,
Kosambi. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you have mentioned about Eric J. Hobsbawm, and as you have rightly said that every volume that he had written, particularly on modern history, capitalism, whether it is Age of Revolution, Age of Capital, Age of Empire, then Age of Extremes, all those have contributed immensely towards understanding capitalism, our modern times.
Yeah.
But then I was looking at when you were writing on Eric J. Hobsbawm, particularly his last volume and last volume, Age of Extremes. You also pointed out that there was a sense of, should I say, pessimism in him.
Yeah, quite.
Pessimism in him. And you had a critical kind of analysis about it. Would you like to elaborate it?
No, but you see, the books by Horsbrough that sort of inspired me, or many other people, the last volumes are a departure from that.
Yes, sir.
The earlier volumes had a kind of spirited, air about them. And they were, how do I put it? They were, there was still some optimism in them, social optimism. And hope is the hope.
Driving force
And
for your.
it is the essence of all radicalism, including Marxism.
Yes.
When you lose hope, you lose hope in the human race, in the future, and the possibility of changing society. That's what upset me about Hobsbawm. Well, that is because the total sort of decline of the British Communist Party. It's the shrinking of its base. There was a time when it was a considerable base. It lost its contact with the people. And Hobsbawm was attached to the party. And the party's
Decline itself.
I won't say pessimism, passivity
Passivity.
also affected him. And the upshot was that he lost hope.
Coming back to, sir, writing history in Assam. Sir, now I want to understand your approach to Assam's history. We have a few historians who have remained very influential in both in writing and in understanding Assam's history, particularly of the modern history of Assam, starting with Edward Gate, then Surya Kumar Bhuyan, H.K. Borpujari, and Amalendu Guha. Of course, we have many other historians who have written on different segments of Assam's history.
Yeah.
So, when you look at Assam's history, how do you, in a way, evaluate the contributions of these historians? Edward Gate, Borpujari, Surya Kumar Bhuyan, and Amalendu Guha.
Edward Gate, he was a civil servant. Like many British civil servants of India, they were also scholars,
Yes.
scholar administrators. So in their spare time, they tried to write the history of India. There was no history of India before that. The Puranas, the Mahabharata, they were called itihasa, but they were not histories in the modern sense. Modern historical discipline is a new thing, based on facts and accuracy of facts and careful collocation of the events in a systematic manner so that some significance can be read into them. So that kind of history, modern European history, it was transferred to India, and a new history of India was being prepared by the civilians. They had made some immense contributions. No, there is no doubt about it. Whatever current Hindutva historians might say, without their contribution, we would have never had modern history.
Modern history.
Of course, they had the colonial outlook, colonial bias, and this should be got rid of. There's no doubt about it. And still, it will be wrong to say that they were full of a sense of superiority about India in everything. No. Some of them are full of admiration for the Indian past. I will just mention one of them, Cunningham, who wrote that book, Historical Geography in India. So the ancient places mentioned in various epigraphy, in books, this and that, where are those places now? Where are those rivers? Where are the mountains? Shravasti, Ujjaini, all those hundreds of names. He carefully went through all the records and prepared an historical geography of India to locate those places so that we can make sense of what happened. Otherwise, if you don't have an idea where this place was and that place was, you won't be able to make sense of what happened in the past. And his one great contribution was excavation of Nalanda. And when I came upon it, I had recently visited about how many years ago? 4 or 5 years now.
4 or 5 years ago, yes.
I was astounded. An immense hillock. Right?
Last year, sir. Last year.
Immense hillock, To excavate it would take hundreds of man hours, and crores of rupees, in fact. So that is how we came to know about Nalanda. Otherwise, we would have no idea that such a thing happened in it. You'll find the scholars' room, teachers, students' room, the remains of classrooms, and how the hostels were maintained. Very interesting, And all this was very carefully dug up, systematically ordered, and modern visitor comes very impressed. So these things are done by the British. They did not always destroy or distort our history. But there's one thing they did, of course, that is creating this Hindu-Muslim divide. Because it's a part of their policy that these two
Was
kinds
it
of...
also the case with Edward Gate? Did he indulge in those things?
Perhaps. I have not
Yes.
considered in in some detail, but perhaps yes, because it was part of their
Colonial policy.
politics and administrative policy. also.
Policy, yes.
Keep people apart so that they cannot make trouble. That's it. And also, when they came into Assam, they sort of inherited the Ahom kingdom. So they always looked at Assam history through that lens, because they were the Ahoms of the dominant power, and the land practically belonged to them. So Assam history was Ahom history. That was, of course, a simplification. And also, the Ahoms had a copious, sources we can draw upon. Buranji's records, this and that. No. Whereas the earlier periods had left a few documents and few written.
Also about the tribal communities and all.
Tribal communities had no history in that
Yes,
sense,
yes.
Except, of course, some kind of oral history. So it was easier to write about the Ahom past, and so through their lenses, they thought that they were the people here. That was, of course, an exaggeration and sort of probably distortion. But in an attempt to sort of correct it, people have gone to the other extreme, that Ahom history has no place. Yeah.
So how did Surya Kumar Bhuyan depart from it?
Now, Surya Kumar was very, very much a part of it. He drew upon Assam history after Hemchandra Goswami. And, he did one thing, He dug up interesting facts about the Ahom period people did not know about. Lasit Barfukan, Jaimati, and
Atan
all
Bora
kinds of
Gohain,
things.
Atan
Atan Bora Gohain. And also somebody called Ramani Gaburu, an Ahom princess who got forcibly married into a Mughal harem, And she had written a very interesting letter to an Assamese Ahom official who was trying to sell Lower Assam to the Mughals. And she rebuked him, and said, "What are you doing?" That kind of is very interesting, isn't it? So these things, but he was not a professional historian in that sense. History was a kind of romance.
But compilation of all these Buronjis, don't you think that was an important contribution?
They sort of printing them.
Yes.
He left a copious source of historical material for later historians. That is true. But it was edited very, shabbily. He just got those histories together, printed them. He sort of course, deciphered them, I mean, in the sense, and got those things copied, but nothing more than that. Modern editing, we should have been different. He'd have things just as he found them. His major historical
Contribution.
book is the English book. What is that book? Assam, England.
England Assamese relations.
Anglo-Assamese.
Anglo-Assamese relations.
That's a
PhD. His PhD.
PhD because it was done
London
in Britain.
University.
No?
London University.
If he had done it shabbily, it would not have been.
Given
so he was
PhD
very
degree.
methodical, scientific, critical, which he was not earlier. Earlier, when he wrote about Ahom history, he was writing in a romantic vein, glorifying everything more or less and suppressing the uglier facts. That is not history.
Was it also a necessity of time because to arouse the nationalist interest? For example, his writing on Lachit Borpujari.
No, that is true.
Yes.
But I think, looking back, that the uglier side should not have been omitted altogether. Because if you want to move ahead, you have to discard all those things. Acquire and assimilate whatever is good, and the false weaknesses should be understood precisely, correctly, clearly, and discarded. This was not done.
Yes, sir.
This is yet to be done.
And how do you look at H.K. Borpujari, Rambakanta Borpujari?
He was a very disciplined historian, and in fact, I had praised his book in Assamese. Assam in the Days of the Company.
There was also his PhD thesis.
It is a very good book,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I think, I was the first person to see and write about its importance.
Yes.
And Sir was very pleased about it. Because, he had written, people sometimes read it and forgot about it. Its significance was not mentioned anywhere.
What about his volumes on comprehensive history of Assam? 5 volumes.
Well, these are, compendia of accurate historical facts and systematically acquired and ordered and recorded. But you don't see any pattern in it, I once said that everything has got to fit into a certain pattern from beginning to the end. But there should have been patterns. Yes, why things happened, how it happened, nothing of the sort. Simply a chronicle of events, but carefully acquired, examined, corrected, and presented, of course.
But as far as the comprehensive history of Assam is concerned, where there are 5 volumes, these are basically compiled and edited volumes. And one important thing that I could find is that for the first and second volume, I don't know how was it possible for him that he persuaded the historians of different universities of India to write on Assam's history, from prehistory to, for example, 13th century. He persuaded historians from Lucknow University, Banaras Hindu University, Calcutta University, Jadavpur University. In a way, he was an entrepreneur in historical research.
Quite so. He had that spirit, He was also a man who encouraged a lot of other people also.
Yes. Could build up a team.
Also, he had a lot of contacts also. And it is good that he persuaded historians from other universities to write about Assam. Because they were in Assam, at that time, there were no qualified people. Even now, about ancient Assam's history, how many people do you think are interested in or writing about it with authority? Very few.
Yes, sir. Coming to Amalendu Guha, I think you have written extensively on Amalendu Guha.
Yeah.
You have reviewed his books, particularly Plataras to Saras. Other historians that we mentioned, in case of Edward Gate, He had the colonial kind of approach, both for Surya Kumar Bhuyan and for H.K. Borpujari. They had the nationalist approach in a way, and Amalendu Guha was a departure, taking a Marxist approach. And as I said, you have already spoken about it. You have written extensively on it. How do you evaluate his overall contributions?
Now, the origins of the book, Planter to Swaraj, is actually they are very interesting. Actually, the government of India had entrusted some scholars to write about the legislatures
Legislative
of various states. And Guha was assigned the work on Assam. So it was basically a chronicle of the Assam legislature, Assam Assembly. And that gives him very little scope to write about Assam in general. But he very cleverly, wrote both about the legislature and about the social background. Social background was, of course, rather mechanically, dealt with. Here, for example, workers' movement, here peasants' movement like this, trade unions. But the society of Assam is simply not a collection of them. As a Marxist, he may be interested. So I think there is a kind of injustice to the middle class in Assam, to which he had a very patronizing, sometimes very ironic attitude. He later on came to, realize the shortcoming. And the latest edition brought out by Annekha, there he tries to make amends. Otherwise, earlier he was very ironical about Gopinath Bordole and so on, so that he was not very sympathetic either, or he took a rather contemptuous view of the bourgeois struggles, middle class struggles. But they were also important. For our Assamese identity also.
But for medieval Assam and early colonial Assam?
That, of course, is a later volume.
1990.
There he was more and he sort of made us aware of things in the background, like the topography of Assam, its impact on Assam history. Very original, insightful things. And also, since those things are hardly mentioned in our scholarly writings, he was a pioneer in many of those things. And his approach was both Marxist and scientific. So the medieval Assam and but still, I think, there should be more debates and about it.
Yes. You also mentioned about his contribution towards understanding the Muamuriya revolution.
Yeah. But they are also, I think he was absolutely wrong. Wrong because his theory that the Muhammadiyas, they were advanced peasants. So they wanted to change the method of agriculture from the kind of forced labor that the Ahams had introduced into modern, independent agriculture. But in all the records, there is no mention of that at all. Nobody can find anything about it. It was his brainchild, figment of his imagination. And really, if there were some advanced peasants at the time, they had no link with Mahapuniyas. Mahamuriya were primarily a rebellion with Motoks and Morans. They were primitive agriculturists, newly introduced to some improved agriculture, newly introduced, where the tribal method of agriculture was given up. That is true. But this is not the kind of modern agriculture that Guha had in mind. But he dug up a lot of interesting things. And I had a long debate with him. And I am very poor in economics, So I got the worst of it. But still, I don't think that, his version is quite adequate,
Yes.
A lot of things.
Now, I want to come to your own contributions. For example, one is the middle class, Assamese middle class. You have aroused a lot of interest in Assamese middle class, which subsequently were taken up by other scholars. But apart from that, your understanding of Assam history, particularly transition from tribal mode of production to feudalism. And in our one of our earlier conversations, you mentioned that it was you who initially picked up this issue, the transition of Assam's economy or the kind of Assamese society from tribalism to feudalism.
So,
Yes.
what do you want to ask?
No, how do you look at it? Then, what were how do you think that there were certain areas, there were certain issues, who you can claim as the initiator for a historical debate?
For example, the middle class thing, I realized at that time, vaguely, that the middle class was the leading class in Assam.
Now, you think that that was not a kind of...
But the historians who wrote about Assam, they talk about Assam, Assamese. Who were the Assamese? How were the ideas formed? How was the society led in a certain direction? What was Assam's role in the independence movement? These were questions that were related to the middle class. They led where the other classes followed, in these matters, in modernization of Assam. So this is a very important matter. And because of the allergy to the class question, people simply evaded it. And, like a Don Quixote, I went into it and tried to find something in it. And it was a simplified idea of mine, but still, it was a pioneering effort, And I have made some interesting incidental discoveries. For example, people knew that Maniram Dewan had opened 2 tea gardens, which were successful, while the tea gardens opened by the British, they collapsed. They failed. And people just mentioned it, but they never mentioned the names of the tea gardens, which Maniram Dewan had founded. I, by luck, had sort of put 2 and 2 together. And from different sources, I came to the conclusion that Sinamora and something probably called Chendlung or something, these were the gardens. So these kinds of incidental discoveries were also made during my research. And also other things like how the tea gardens grew, how it became so impressive, how much profit it collected, so on and so forth. It was, I won't say that it is a very comprehensive or, mature piece of work, but it was pioneering, interesting work. And as for the transition from tribal and to
feudalism,
whenever because I thought that in every matter, Assam was lagging behind. So we should introduce modern methods into history of into different study of different disciplines. So I tried to do it in history to some extent. I found it was somehow interesting, and I realized that these questions had not been asked. I had read about those things, in books about other countries, and there these questions are considered pertinent and interesting also. So I thought, why not Assam? And also because I found that the Assam's kingship, it was a very interesting kind of blend between what was tribal and what was,
Feudal.
how do I put it? Feudal, let us say. A more developed stage of history. And because of the fact that, the transition had not been complete, people do not realize it. I will just give you one example. These questions are still not taken up by our historians. When you read the inscriptions,
Yes, sir.
Poli, Tamar Poli, this and that, and the stone inscriptions, you find that whenever the kings granted land to Brahmins and Kayast, who introduced modern agriculture in Assam, it is always mentioned that land producing so much of rice. So in Assamese we say, Iman don dhan, jut utpanna hoy. The actual size of the year is never mentioned. So many yards, so many feet, nothing of that sort. So many acres, no. Always the amount of rice produced by
Quantity.
This is a tribal method because the modern land survey or even feudal land survey was not developed in Assam. We didn't have that kind of expertise and that kind of experts. So, I once listened to a lecture by Anil.
Rai Chaudhary.
Anil, what's his name? That, famous educationist.
From Delhi University.
He is no longer in Delhi. He is in the right to education movement.
Yes.
Anil
Sadgopal.
Anil Sadgopal. He, by the way, mentioned one thing too in a meeting, that his tribal students, they did not know how to sort of, measure land. Land measurement was something strange to them. They always mentioned the quantity of land produced by the land. That is how they measured land, not by yards, feet, acres, and so on. So from that I collected that the same must be true of, because with the survival of the tribal, elements in Assamese feudal society.
Yes,
So that kind of thing.
Sir, this understanding of transition from tribalism to feudalism, that is quite evident in your writings on Sankaradeva, Ohomia Jatiya Jibanot Mahapurukhia Parampara. And when we read it, I could find that you are also reasserting these arguments that when we have to study the greater Assamese society or the period of Sankaradeva, these are some important elements that we need to understand.
Yeah, the thing is that in Coast Bihar, it was partly different. In Coast Bihar, you find the introduction of Persian terms, Pargana, and also land measurement borrowed from the Mughals. Coast Bihar was close to the Mughal areas, Bengal also. So those things are picked up by the Coast Bihar state. But it did not survive long. When Narnarayan also he died, these things also collapsed. But otherwise, those are the, In Ahom history, you don't find anything of that sort until very recent times. Nothing about Moja, Pargana, nothing of that sort. It was always a certain amount of land granted to some officer or somebody or a priest, and they were to have, in return, they were to sort of present to the royal granary so much of rice, so much of this and that. That was the kind of you know, land relation in Assam. Whereas in Coast Bihar, for some time, it was more advanced. So these things are important to consider. That's why it was possible for Sankaradeva to live in peace in Coast Bihar. Whereas in a home area state, he would be like just other peasants, not much better than pikes. Which was,
Sir, I thought of asking you about subaltern historiography, but for today I am not going to ask about it because we have delved into Assam's history.
yeah.
I want to have some understanding about your approach to Sankaradeva.
Before proceeding any further, let me tell you that even now, practicing Assam historians do not raise fresh questions. It even doesn't occur to them. For example, Orubjiti Soike has this book,
Quest for Modern Assam. Quest for Modern
Quest
Assam.
for Modern Assam. He starts from 1942. He mentions the scarcity of rice and so on and so forth. But he does not mention the impact of the terrible price rise on the quality of life of the Assamese middle class. They are very hard pressed. And it should be, it's in a historical fact.
Yes.
Should be mentioned.
Yes. I think primarily it is due to the fact that he was dependent on the archival materials
and practically mindlessly putting them together.
Yes, yes, yes.
With a sort of very optimistic view of the Assamese middle class. That they had suffered a lot. Was not mentioned at all.
Yes.
Yeah, please continue.
Yes. So I was trying to understand. I was trying to put a question regarding your understanding of Sankaradeva and his time. And as I mentioned that Ohomia Jatiya Jibanot Mahapurukhya Parampara, for which you have got the Sahitya Academy Award. Your whole approach towards understanding Sankaradeva is also based on a kind of historical approach.
Yep.
Where you have mentioned that during that time, very particularly, or during that time or prior to that time, the Assamese society was undergoing a lot of transitions.
Yeah.
And settled economy emerged, and Brahmins played a very important role in this regard. So I want to understand your views about that time, the context of Sankaradeva.
You see, Sankaradeva himself had to move about from one place to another quite a lot of times during his life. Bordoa, then the attacks by the Kasadis, probably Tiwas, he calls them Kasadis. And then coming to Gangmo in Majuli, and then also shifting from Gangmo to Coast Bihar. Because the entire area was in some kind of unrest. The unrest was because the old semi-tribal system of society, social products of surplus, would not work anymore. And there was need for a society that produced more surplus in a systematic manner. And for that, a bigger kingdom with discipline should be maintained or should be formed. A state exploiting a larger number of people over a bigger area. And unconsciously that is what the Ahoms have been doing. So there was a lot of warfare, conflict, and this upset Sankaradeva, concentration on his founding on a new religion, perception of new realities, and writing and preaching about them. So he had to move elsewhere. So that was a thing, that is how the Assamese society was being formed at that time. And his seminal contribution remained at the very heart of Assamese culture ever since,
Yes.
whatever his personal sufferings. And I came to realize that in dealing with the question of the Assamese people after the, Assam movement. The Assam movement was a tumultuous movement. A lot of bad things were done. But there is no doubt about it that the larger number of Assamese people, largest number, were involved in it. It was a popular movement, whether you like it or not. And there's a lot of, enthusiasm, sacrifice, and that made mainly not by leaders, but by the common people.
Common people, yeah.
Who expected a lot more from it and were thoroughly disillusioned later on. So I admired that spirit, though I did not always like the results. And so I tried to think about the source of it, how the people got together and remained together. And I find one of the primary source of that enthusiasm, inspiration, energy was Sankaradev's movement, his contribution. And how his ideas kept people together in spite of differences. So I took an interest in his work, his contribution. And my whole life is sort of, you might say, concerned with studying Sankaradeva, revising my ideas about him, and so on and so forth. And so that is how I came to take an interest in Sankaradeva. And I had an earlier also, I had an interest, but it was not that consuming sort.
Yes.
It was just one of the many scholarly interests. But after the Assam movement, I took it quite seriously. And though the original script of the first edition of the Parampara was not much a thing to write about, But subsequent editions, so more and more material into it, more and more thought given to it. So I think it remains an interesting book.
Yes, sir.
And in that book, I tried to show what kind of values that we have inherited from it, and that remains still pertinent, were evolved by the movement started by Sankaradeva, and how, unfortunately, these had been distorted. And the original democratic core of his religion, that had been sort of forgotten. And Brahminical ideas also, they sort of dominated society. It was unfortunate. And also, it is the distorted Brahminical idea in various forms that still sort of forms our understanding of
Sankaradeva. Sir, regarding Sankaradeva only, how did you develop interest to do a work such as Kirtan Puthir Rock Bisar?
That was the same origin.
Yes.
The impression made by the Assam movement on.
Yes, yes. Oh, that was also product of impression made by Assam movement. And final question is that you have an elaborate essay called Manu Sankaradeva. Manu Sankaradeva. So how does it differ from overall understanding of Sankaradeva? Sankaradeva is considered to be incarnation of God, but then you keep on asserting that Sankaradeva is a human being, and his whole contributions was to uphold the human values and bring equality or a democratic society.
No, but there is no question that he was an unparalleled genius.
Yes.
Tremendous creativity.
Yes.
Immense energy, persistence in his goals and his vision, in spite of many sufferings and trials. And, this makes him not only a charismatic figure, but also, a kind of, you know, how do I put it? A kind of man of destiny.
Yes.
He was born and he matured through struggles and sufferings and gave something lasting to Assamese society, which is basic to its character. But people have not understood him, they are so, stunned, astonished by his contribution, by his genius, that they forget that the essence of his religion is also this humanism,
Yes.
this democratic spirit. And he lived that, It was not something that he preached. Many incidents in his life show his great humanity, his love and compassion for fellow human beings, for animals, and his how do I put it? His tolerance,
Yes.
immense tolerance, and his vision of the future. And in some ways, he was a revolutionary.
Yes, sir.
And not in the sense that our scholars understand,
Yes.
but in a different way, socially also.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I found one thing very interesting. I don't know Sanskrit so much,
Yes.
so I studied the Bhagavata through translation, the English translation. There is one place, Bhagavata is a very liberal, still Brahminical text.
Brahmanic.
Every few pages you find praise of Brahmins, this and that. Brahmins should be honored, respected. They are like gods, that kind of thing. And sometimes Sankaradeva also writes some things like that. But in major ways he departs from it. There is one place in Bhagavata, I think the 10th or 11th canto, where Sankaradeva says that Namadharma, its greatness would be forgotten by the Dijas.
Brahmins.
No, Dijas, Brahmins, Kayastas, Kshatriyas, and so on. And so they will be totally heedless of bhakti. Whereas the Kaivartas, the lowest caste, they will be devoted to Hanam Dharma and to devotion to Hari.
Yes.
And therefore, they will be the predominant caste in Kali Yuga.
Okay.
I tried to source this in the original Bhagavad. It was quite different in Bhagavad.
Okay. It's not there in Bhagavad.
Bhagavad says that, well, in the Kali Yuga, things will be so bad that Kaivartas will be evil. People like Kaivartas will be the dominant caste or something like that.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So imagine,
Yes. Yes, sir.
Apparently he was sticking to the old text.
Yes.
Actually, he was making a revolutionary statement.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And we'll have been very happy to continue the conversation.
So have I been.
Yes, yes, sir. But we'll again come back because we said that we have a lot of other issues to be discussed with you, particularly your understanding of subaltern approach, on which you have written so extensively. Also, we'll be happy if we can have a conversation regarding your evaluation of Lakshminath Bejbarua, Jyoti Prasad Agarola, and also few very eminent literary personalities of Assam, including Banikanta Kakoti, and so on and so forth.